due to a dust storm. The view was spectacular, but it was also hazardous to health.
Wow, that's freaky.
Sydney-siders woke to find their Emerald City had turned an eerie burnt orange. Through there somewhere is the Opera House, not the picture posted.
That dust has come from the freaking desert. It's probably radioactive.
It's just a little bit of dust, Dylan. I'm having a shower.
Dad, they're pulling out mountains of this shit every week. They're going to dig a hole 4 kilometres wide and 1k deep. They're just burying it under a bit of dirt. This stuff is toxic for a couple of 100,000 years.
They wouldn't do it if it wasn't safe, Dylan. Come on, give them a chance.
The peak body of science, the National Academy of Sciences in the United States, came out with a report several years ago to say that no dose of radiation is safe. No dose of radiation is safe. And each dose you get adds to your risk of getting cancer or having your genes changed in your sperm or eggs to produce deformed or diseased children.
No safe level of radiation exposure. That's what the science is telling us. The mining companies, however, supported by the politicians, have a different view. What do you think? If the DNA in our cells is exposed to radiation, even low doses of radiation, it can have a negative impact, causing cell mutations and cancer. Scientists in the United States and Europe have recently discovered it takes much lower doses of radiation to break the double strand of the DNA. A double strand break in the DNA is generally agreed by medical scientists to be the precursor to cancer. The DNA in human cells also passes on genetic information to our children. If it's radiated, it can affect this genetic information, causing birth defects and disease. Or it can skip our children's generation and come out later in our grandchildren.
After your gene has been altered by radiation from Roxby, gamma radiation or radon or radium, you won't drop dead. Doesn't work like that. It takes a long time for cancer to develop. You know, maybe 20 years later you're sitting there and you think, geez, that's sore. And you've got a red lump there. And you think, I better go to the doctor. And the doctor takes an X-ray and there's a sort of bony mass that looks a bit like a sunrise. And the doctor says, you've got bone cancer. You'll have to have your leg amputated. But the bone cancer doesn't wear a sign saying, I was made by some radium you swallowed when you were mining uranium 20 years ago.
Miners at BHP Billiton's Olympic Dam or Rio Tinto's Ranger Mine must sign a non-disclosure clause when they start work. They undertake not to speak about anything they've seen or heard while working at the mine. This draconian practice applies long after the workers have left the mine. We heard plenty of horror stories of uranium spills at Ranger and Olympic Dam, but workers, with few exceptions, were too intimidated to speak on the record.
A number of years ago, somehow the companies managed to get the water supplies mixed up. The uranium contaminated water's coming into the drinking supply, into the showers. People are showering in it, people are drinking it. 400 times the daily exposure limits that are recommended in government guidelines. And how would you feel if you were covered in that water in a shower? How would you feel if you've drunk that water?
Look, I don't know all the details of that, but I do understand that as a consequence of that, there was considerable assistance, as would normally be the case, given to those workers, and continues to do, and it continues to be given. But if you want more information about that, you will have to talk to the company about that.
There was a situation where I was required to work in an area that contained acid, tailings dam acid, which possibly could have been radioactive, I don't know. But I did not have the correct protective clothing and the protective requirements that I wanted. So I brought this up with the main supervisor with the company I was working with the next day at the safety meeting, And I mentioned to him what I thought I would have needed in the way of protective clothing for me to go in. I told him why I refused to go in and do that work, and consequently I was sacked. I no longer had a job there the next day.
One time we had a major incident that happened, and someone had left a hose on and uranium got all wet, and when it hit the drums, it just squashed the drums. And when I walked over to the area, I was talking to one of the co-workers, and I said what it's like, and he said it's not good. As I went in, there was dry uranium all over the ground, falling off their boots, clothing, overalls, all on the ground. Just like dust, you walk through it, you kick it up, you're going to breathe it in. So guys weren't thinking about cleaning that up. So I called up the supervisor, closed the area down and hosed it all up, cleaned the area up. To them it's, you know, production, production, production. Get the job done, let's get back online and get going.
All I'm suggesting is that these miners need to be informed of the risk, and as an employer, that risk needs to be minimised. And that's just basic employer-employee relations 101.
Once the miner moves on, no medical reports or follow-up health checks are carried out by the company. Cancer can take up to 20 years or more to come out, just as a worker is hitting his straps and about to become a grandfather, long after the company's CEOs have collected their bonuses and moved on.
Dad, am I going to get cancer? Will I go bald?
Good one, Dylan. You freaked your sister out. This is Australia, not Zimbabwe. The government's not going to put our lives at risk.
No one gives a shit about us, Dad. It's about money.
Yeah, well, where's your dirt bike going to come from? It's not growing out of my ass. Look, it's safe.
Like asbestos.
ETU works closely with investment bankers. I'm very happy to have done so on this occasion.
How you can just pass the buck, move offshore and make your millions and walk away without